Love it. That's great. All right, well, I think everybody's had a chance to sign in, so I'm gonna hop in and do present my screen. But if at any point, once I present my screen, I can't see you guys anymore or the chat, so feel free to mute and unmute if you have any questions that come up, and then I'll hop out of the presentation and whenever it's done. But it'll be a similar format to last time where I hope to not do a lot of speaking, but this one does have a little bit more information that I want to share directly with you guys. So just as a quick review, our 4 principal pillars are that principals in the DLP should help to launch the program into their school, support their coach and their teachers so that coaching can succeed, measure the performance of their coach and the impact of coaching, and amplify that impact through projects that help amplify the impact of coaching in your school and community. So today's session, we're going to talk about how you can measure, use the measure pillar, and specifically measure the impact of coaching at your school. So in today's Hangout, we're going to talk a little bit about those ways to measure and specifically how the Dynamic Learning Project will help support you to measure program success. We'll also talk about lessons learned from last year, and Kimberly and Shelley, who are on the call, are both principals from last year. I know a lot of you guys had a chance to meet Kimberly last week. They'll share a little bit about how they measured and advocated for their program at their school, and then we'll have time to ask questions of them and do our final reflection. So I want to kind of go quickly through some of the slides so that we get to spend time with Shelley and Kimberly, but wanted to talk a little bit about how might we measure the impact of coaching. And when we think about different ways to measure how coaching is going in the school, there's really quantitative and qualitative ways to measure. So when we think about quantitative, that's anything like the charts, the graphs, the numbers, any quantitative metrics, aka data, that allows us to see how coaching is impacting at your school. But then there are also qualitative measurements. So that's you being able to capture the bright spots that you're seeing in your building, or get anecdotes from teachers or students, or collect quotes from people who have been coached about how things are going. So really that all comes down to the stories of the impact that you're seeing in your building. And the real power comes whenever you're able to combine that quantitative data with those qualitative stories of impact, because that really gives you the ability to measure the impact holistically within your school and think of ways to continuously improve in your building, and also to advocate for coaching, whether that be to teachers who might want to participate, to your district that might need to fund a coaching position, to your parents that want to know what's going on in your building. But combining that data with those stories of impact really allows you to improve and to continue to advocate. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about how the DLP is going to help you to measure impact. So one exciting thing that we wanted to share is that at the end of every coaching cycle, the Dynamic Learning Project is going to share customized school reports with you. And these customized school reports are going to show data around student impact. So things like, how are your students using technology impactfully? How engaged are they? It'll also show teacher impact, like how your teachers rate their own tech skills and how satisfied they are with the coaching process in your building. And it'll also have metrics around program effectiveness, like how valuable the various DLP program elements are and how much time they feel like they have available for coaching. So this is an example graph of something that you'll get in one of those school reports. So you can see here that we have a baseline of how teachers felt at the beginning of the cycle around how students were, for instance, using technology to develop their collaboration skills. And then also at the end of the cycle, how that teacher improved by 4 points to help students use technology for collaboration. So those reports are going to come out at the end of every cycle, and they'll be customized to your school. But one thing I want to call out is that you're only going to get out of those reports what you put in. And so there's a couple of different ways in which the Dynamic Learning Project, and specifically the Digital Promise research team, is collecting data from you to deliver those reports. And there's two key things or two key instruments that they're using to collect data. One are in-depth surveys, and the other are quick snapshot surveys. So I want to spend a little time talking about those two different things. The in-depth surveys, and I can send these slides out to you guys afterwards because I realize that there's a lot of text on them. But the in-depth surveys are going to happen twice per year. Many of you have already completed the pre-survey and sent that out to your teachers, but for those that haven't, we'll send some information tomorrow. But these pre-surveys go out to all of the teachers in the building, as well as to you and to your coach, and take a little bit of time to complete. It'll take about 15 minutes. But what this allows is for us to have a baseline of what your school looks like before participating in the Dynamic Learning Project. We'll send a comparable survey at the end of the year, again, to all teachers as well as to you and your coach, so that we can see growth both in the teachers that have been coached and those that didn't receive coaching, but really be able to see the impact across the board at your school. The other data instrument are snapshot surveys. And these are quick little surveys that should take no more than 5 minutes to complete. And those happen about once a month. So they happen twice in every coaching cycle. And the people that fill out the snapshot surveys are you and your coach, and also the teachers who are actively being coached that cycle. And these will come in an email from Digital Promise. So these are quick little surveys that you, your coach, and your teachers need to fill out. So what that means is that across the year, what the research requirements look like is the pre-survey at the start of the year, the post-survey at the end of the year, and then these little snapshots once a month throughout the course of the year. And the big asks we have of you as principals in the DLP is first to complete your own snapshots. That provides us with really valuable data about how the program is succeeding and how we can improve and better support you, but also gives us insights about how your coach is doing. The other thing that we ask of you is for you to encourage completion of this research in your building. The data that we're able to provide to you in those school reports is only as strong as the data that your teachers put in. So if you only have 20% of teachers who fill out the snapshots, then the results that we send to you will not actually be indicative of what's happening in your building. So from our side, what we ask of you is to work with your coach to make sure that teachers are aware of how important snapshots are and really encourage them during those weeks of the month when snapshots are happening to complete those surveys. In addition to the end of cycle reports that we'll provide to you, I wanted to call out how else the DLP will help you to measure impact. The other piece of data the other data that we provide to you is data from the Coaching Dashboard app. So as you know, your coaches are using the DLP Coaching Dashboard to enter in how frequently they have teacher meetings or how frequently they're visiting classrooms. They talk about what different activities teachers are doing on the SAMR model. They write an indication of how impactful the technology use is in specific teachers' classrooms. So all of that data is being added into the Coaching Dashboard app. And you, as a principal, in the principal dashboard, will soon have access to some of that data. It will be anonymized so that you don't know specifically which teacher the different metrics tie to, but it'll give you a sense of what your coach's workload looks like, how effectively they're able to balance their time, whether or not you're seeing any improvements in impactful technology use. And all of that data will help you to, again, measure the impact in your building, know how to improve, and to also be able to share some of the successes that you're having. So the two quantitative measures are those school reports and the dashboard apps. So we hope that you're really excited about all of the data that will be provided as part of this program, because that allows you to have those quantitative metrics of how coaching is doing in your building. But as mentioned, it's not all about the data. It's also about some of those qualitative stories of impact. So at this point, I'm going to stop talking and pass it over to Kimberly to start to talk about how she measured impact in her building last year. Potentially things like how she collected bright spots, how she shared stories upward and outward, and any best practices that she has for you guys. So Kimberly, do you mind taking it away?
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. So one of the first things I would love to share was that my coach last year, Miko, I have a new coach this year, so I'm going to speak a lot to what we did last year. But she was able, whenever she went into classrooms and did observations, she would look for patterns of technology use. And then in our meetings, we would talk about the different patterns that she was seeing. So like, for instance, she would say, social studies, I'm most likely to see technology being used in social studies classes, but it's at a very low level on the SAMR scale. But in math, they hardly ever use technology, but when they do, it's really high on the SAMR scale. And so we would talk about those different things and the patterns that she would see. So we'd say, well, how do we get math to use it more? I mean, great that they're using at a high level. How do we increase their frequency? And then how do we get social studies to work up that SAMR scale and the levels of technology used with their students? So we would talk about that, and I would always ask her, what obstacles are you facing? How can I remove those? What support do you need from me to be able to achieve this? And instructional coaching was new to her. Like, that coaching aspect was new. And so we would kind of play a lot of conversations in our meetings together, since as leaders, we have crucial conversations all the time. But one of the ways that we worked on highlighting teachers is we have a golden hashtag. And so it's the best tweet about student learning. And so I started off, and this is the best thing, is that I only do it once. I only touch it once. I picked the first tweet, the best tweet about student learning. We have a golden hashtag we bought at Michael's for like $6. We do a certificate that we print out and a couple James passes, and we take it and we give it to them. And so then from then on, every week, that person picks a new person on Twitter who has done the best tweet with the school hashtag about the best tweet about learning and that technology use in class. And so it just keeps going on, and we just pass the golden hashtag around. And it's pretty cool to see teachers acknowledge other teachers. And it's also really cool because I don't have to manage it, which is great as well. We would also do teacher highlights in our staff newsletter or in my short newsletter to the staff. So like if a teacher did something great and Miko, my previous coach, saw that and wanted to highlight it, she talked to me a little bit about it. We'd write up something quick, something simple, and then do a teacher spotlight in our newsletter to parents, and then kind of in my little brief newsletter to the staff. And it was just kind of like I see you, you're doing great. Even if it was something small, we knew that it would have a big impact on the teacher. So there you go.
Thank you. That was wonderful. And Shelly, not to put you on the spot, but are you open to introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about how you measured impact of coaching last year?
Sure. And I will apologize. I have been fighting the crud all week as well down here. So it's been, yeah. So I'm not doing a Barry White impression. This is just me right now. So I'm Shelly Brown. I'm the principal at Mabry Middle School, and this is our second year. Kristen Edge is my coach, and she's awesome. And I would just add to some things that Kimberly was saying as I was listening to that there are some ways qualitatively that I would say that I would measure impact, looking and talking about lesson plans, observations, walkthroughs, just walking through the classrooms. And those are things that you can see the impact of that coaching, and just looking at those lesson plans and doing those walkthroughs and having conversations with Kristen about that. And that would be helpful for both of us in planning our professional development, or maybe some hot spots that she need to work on with certain teachers. And then you really start to notice a difference in walking through and looking at lesson plans between those teachers that were in coaching cycles and those that have not. I think we're just all sharing this cold look. I think everybody in the world has a cold. I know. I've got my Kleenex too, ready to go, just in case I need it. But there's a difference between those teachers that are actively working with Kristen as opposed to those that are not. And then, I said hot spots, but I also want to say that, some ways that we would highlight our bright spots. We do digital badging now, and they've really taken off. That's taken off. That was completely new to us. And so that's doing well. But in all honesty, the thing that has the most impact in encouraging our teachers is generally bragging on them, and just in professional development meetings or on a shout out email, or just talk. I think even more than a shout out email or putting on the Mabry memo, Mr. Wilson was doing this and we're so proud of him, that kind of thing. It's just when you talk about them positively and what they're doing in a room of other teachers, of their peers, that really has a major impact on them, I think. And that's a powerful, it's easy and doesn't cost anything. And it's a very powerful tool to help highlight those teachers that are really doing a great job.
I love that. And at this point in time, we're going to turn it over to Q&A. So in the chat bar, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them here. But you can also hop in and out of the mic if you want to ask a question out loud.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
I just
go for it,
turned
Erica.
off my mute.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry. So while I'm listening to the conversation, I'm very techie savvy. So I was hopping on and trying to get onto the principal dashboard, and I can't seem to log on. It's saying that I'm not authorized. Is something wrong with that, or what happened with that?
Shoot me an email, Erica. We have it set up to your primary email address, but it might be, is that a G Suite address? Do you know if it's a Google email address?
No,
That happened to me, but I was able to get on if you just click the, I think it says allow. It will give you your Google login.
yeah, because my Google login is not my official school email address. That's why, and everything was set up through my official school email address, which is not a Google account. So yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah, so I'll shoot you an email, Erica. We'll just need to find out which Google address you want us to allow access to, and so you'll just use that to sign into the dashboard.
Okay, I'll work on that.
Cool. Thank you for checking that.
Thanks.
Does anybody have any questions for Kimberly or Shelly or myself? Shelly, I have a question for you. You mentioned that, walkthroughs is a really good way to kind of see what's going on. Do you have a formal list of what you're looking for on walkthroughs?
It's not very formal, but my assistant principal and I do have several like Google Forms that we use for walkthrough about just kind of help us keep up with it. And what we'll communicate with the teachers, like every 2 weeks, we'll put a new one out there and we'll say, over the next 2 weeks, we're going to be specifically looking for this when we walk through. And it changes from time to time. But it's not really formal, but it does allow for us to have a little bit of quantitative data too, so we can go back and look at the responses and see all, kind of what was going on. And but we'll change it often, so it's nothing set in stone, and it's something that we completely came up with on our own.
Awesome. I have a question for the group. We've tossed around in the past that potentially one thing that would be helpful for the DLP program team to provide would be kind of a proposed walkthrough sheet of like what does impactful technology use look for. Is that something that anybody would find valuable, or do you feel like you already kind of know what it is you're looking for whenever you do walkthroughs? Feel free to throw responses in the chat or shout that out.
Hey, this is Heather. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think that would be really good because even if the coach knows what impactful technology looks like, it could be really helpful to, be a little more transparent in what is being looked for, and the teacher can start to realize like, oh, maybe I'm more using it on the substitution level, and I think that would help bridge that gap to be a little more transparent and start some conversations if it was out there.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Shelly and Kimberly also voted up for that. So I will put that on our list of things to work to build for you guys. I think the goal would be for it to not be like a finalized checklist, but maybe a jumping off point that you could then have a conversation with your coach or with your teachers about how you want to modify for it yourself, but kind of give a diving board for you, a springboard. I see, Heather, you had a question in the chat about whether or not there are any student surveys as part of the DLP. There aren't. We have a couple of schools that have opted into being more in-depth case study schools. And so for those handful, we survey students. But the research methods for all the other schools is just those teacher, coach, and principal surveys and snapshots.
Thanks. That's perfect. I was just asking because I know the student ones last year, from the district level perspective, we had to get some coding and what data was being shared for their like personal data. So that makes things a lot easier.
Yeah. That being said, I would say that a lot of times, if you're trying to advocate for a program or fight for a position for next year, those student stories and like in their own words is some of the most powerful evidence that you can present to your district or to your school board. So some way to kind of collect that on your own at your school is a good idea, just to be able to share kind of the holistic story of what's happening in your school. And to that end, Kimberly, I wanted to ask you a question because I know in your district, you guys had to fight to sustain coaching positions after the first year. And what did you find was kind of the most compelling argument or evidence that you took up that allowed you to continue with a coach in your building this year?
I think one of the first things we did was decide to be committed as a junior high team because the coaches are only at the junior high level. There's 8 of us. And so one of the first things we decided as principals was that we are going to commit to rallying for this position together. What we will communicate to leadership are these things to make them feel that how impactful it is on all of our campuses. And so we wanted to be sure there wasn't a weak one in the bunch. But also, we talked a lot about what we had seen on our campus this year, the growth we made. We talked a lot about teacher stories. We talked a lot about student stories and what students were able to produce and what they would not be able to produce before. Also, our junior high schools had just gone one-to-one. And so when you talk about a school going one-to-one and not providing a coach for a teacher on how to manage this device, how to use it in authentic ways, well, it's not really fair. And so we really took that angle as well. Like, we're going to invest millions of dollars to put devices in students' hands. We want to ensure that it's authentic and engaging and that teachers know how to use it and they're not afraid of using it. So, but the first thing was being united and communicating the same thing was really big.
I'm glad it worked out. We have just a minute or two left. Are there any other questions that anybody would like to ask?
Hey, Kristen, I do want to, I know it's kind of backtracking just because it sounds like everybody's done, but I tried to get into the principal dashboard. I just don't see anything. I think I'm in it, but there's nothing on there. Just wanting to make sure.
If you go down to the bottom right, there's probably nothing there because you haven't started taking any notes. If you go down to the bottom right, there's a plus button. And that should allow you to take your first set of notes in there. Do you see that?
No, I just, unless I went to the wrong thing, I went off of, D met with us Tuesday and he had it in his notes, like a link to it. It's DLP coaching dashboard with google.com.
Yep.
That the right one? I see
Yes,
if I-
it is.
on the top left, beside the little icon for the DLP, there are 3 lines, which is a drop down menu. I see my teachers, next steps, principal dashboard, and then a grid for challenge menu. And then that's what I see. With everything else, I don't see anything else on the screen.
Okay, let me shoot you an email and I'll have you send me a screenshot of that and we can get our app developer to make sure that you're in the right place. This is
Perfect.
on us, not on you.
Got it. Gotcha.
All right.
Along those same lines, I can see the plus, but I don't see am I supposed to see how many visits she makes each week? That kind of data on there somewhere?
Not yet. So right now, the principal dashboard is the only features we've rolled out is the note taking for you to take your principal coach meeting notes. Sometime, hopefully in the next week or so, we're going to be launching additional features that will be the anonymized school data reports, as well as a way for you to provide your coach with feedback on their performance, which we'll talk a little bit more about next week. So right now it's just notes, but we're in the process of launching more.
Great, thanks.
Good call out. And our last one of these Hangouts will also be spending the whole time talking about the different features of the principal dashboard and how to use them.
Cool. That'd be good.
Yeah, because I realize there will be a lot there and it'll take a little bit of time to get familiar with it.
Yeah. That'd be helpful. That'd be good. Okay.
Great. Well, to be cognizant of time, I know we're at the hour. Thank you guys so much for coming. And thank you, Shelly and Kimberly, for hopping on and sharing your stories. We will be sending an email tomorrow, I believe, from info@Dynamic Learning Project that has some more information about those various research requirements, just to frame things again for you and your coach. So that'll have some of the same things that I talked about in the first part of today.
Cool.
Great. But if at any point you guys have
Thank you.
questions or suggestions, shoot me an email. I'm all yours.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
guys.
Thank you, Kristen.
Have a good Halloween.
Thanks,
I'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, bye.